All right, Shalom. I just want to say all praises to Yahweh Bahasham, HaMashiach Yahweh Shai, and Shemaya Yasha'Allah, Yahweh Allahayanawa, Yahweh Akkad. This is Elder Barak live, coming to you live from Bogata, Colombia. And Bogata, Colombia is in between Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and South America. That's right, we're in South America, Colombia, Bogata, Colombia. And I just want to bring out a few points concerning Colombia, and also points concerning the indigenous people here in Colombia. They say, you can look it up information-wise, they say 70 to 85, there are 70 to 85 ethnic indigenous people here in Colombia, and also in South America, all over. But here in Colombia, they got over 70 ethnic groups, indigenous ethnic groups here in Colombia. And as you know, they are Israelites. Okay, we know, okay, when you read the scriptures, that they are Israelites, and these indigenous people who they don't give no social media attention, no attention whatsoever, no attention in newspapers, nothing on TV, no news reports concerning these indigenous people. But we know that they are Hebrew Israelites, according to the Bible. Okay, and so I'm going to touch on a few of those points, but I just want to bring out a few things concerning Colombia. Again, Colombia is in South America. It's between Venezuela, you have Ecuador, and you have Peru close by, and and then you have also the Andes Mountains, okay, that run along Colombia and all of South America. We're going to bring out a few points about that. But very importantly, when you come to Colombia, you got to know a few, their main language is Spanish. So you got to know a little bit of Spanish, just to get by. They have 70 ethnic groups. So you know that they have their different languages. Of course, you got the Spaniards, Spanish Edomites here. They have, with their languages, Spanish and so forth. But and then you have other ethnic groups here, and they have their languages. But the main primary language is Spanish. Okay, so it's good to know, like, como estás? How are you? Buenos dias, good morning. Buenas noches, good evening. Gracias, thank you. The words like that, just so you can get by a little bit while you're here. But nevertheless, we want to touch on Colombia and touch on the indigenous people and the natives that are here, which we know are Hebrew Israelites. Okay, but starting with Colombia itself, what is Colombia named after? Who is Colombia named after? Okay, just think about it. Columbus. It's named after Christopher Columbus. Who was Christopher Columbus? That thief, that murderer, that rapist. All they did was pillage and destroy our people when they came here and so-called discovered America and the Caribbean. So-called, they didn't discover nothing because the indigenous people were already here, which we know are Israelites. But Colombia is named after Christopher Columbus, okay? And Colombia itself got its independence when around 1810. It was confirmed in 1819. And at that time, with Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama, they declared their independence at pretty much at the same time from Spain, okay? From Spain, and they called it Gran Colombia, okay? Gran Colombia, which means the Greater Colombia, which means the areas in Colombia that dwell in the north, like Venezuela, Colombia, and then they had Panama with them, but Venezuela and Ecuador, and they had Panama also with them. But nevertheless, they call it Gran Colombia. And so that's a little bit about Colombia. So we want to know exactly what is Colombia known for. Okay, there's a few things that it's known for. Pretty much came on the map. You're talking about, from the 80s up until the 90s, early 2000s. What is Colombia known for? But let's start off with the coffee bean. Colombia is known for the coffee bean. Colombia is rich in coffee. Okay, a lot of their export, a lot of the money they make through export is through the coffee bean. Okay, one of their richest crops is the coffee bean. Okay, and richest coffee bean throughout the whole world is Colombia. Okay, it's known for that. Okay, what else is it known for? Colombia produces some of the largest cocaine. They're some of the largest cocaine producers in the world. They produce cocaine on a high level. No wonder they have some of the top narcotic kingpin drug dealers in the earth in Colombia, because cocaine is produced on a high level here in Colombia, on a very, very high level. Okay, so they're known for that, believe it or not. And then, of course, what else are they known for? Pablo Escobar. Okay, one of the biggest narcotics kingpin in the world, Pablo Escobar. Okay, he had a narcotics empire, I think, dwelling from the late 40s up until the 80s. Okay, Pablo Escobar. Okay, a drug kingpin. So, but that sort of put Colombia on the map. When you're talking about all the coverage they had concerning trying to capture Pablo Escobar, it put Colombia, Medellin, on the map. Okay, and so Colombia has, Bogata is one of their biggest main cities. I think about 17 million people here, something like that. And then you have Bogata, one of the main cities. Then you have Medellin, I think has about 2 million people or so. You have Cali, you have Cartagena. These are some of the main cities in Colombia. Now, Colombia is very big, okay? For example, Bogota is about 20 hours away driving. From Bogota to Cartagena, that's about 20 hours drive. So it's very big. To Cali, it's about 7 to 10 hours. To Medellin, it's about 7 hours drive. So you have, it's a pretty big place. All right. And so what we're going to do is try to go over the indigenous population here, which we know are Israelites. Now, when you read the scriptures, the Most High teaches us that Israel will be scattered all over the earth, okay? In the remote section of the earth also. So, and here in Colombia, you have indigenous natives that may not live in the main cities, but they live in the outskirts of Colombia, all right? Like near the Andes Mountains, near the Amazon, in certain areas like that. And they don't get no media attention. They don't get no newspaper attention, but we know that they are Israelites. Okay, we know this because the scriptures teach us that when you read the Bible around 722 BC, right, it's during the Assyrian Empire, that the 10 tribes took it upon themselves in their minds. They said, look, we're going to go to another land, see if we can keep the commandments, the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments there. And we're going to go into another land and see if we could do better, because we didn't do a good job in keeping the commandments in our own land. So let's see if we can go to another land and keep the commandments. So what they did is they took on a journey, and it took them a year and a half, all right, to get to where they were going. And the Bible calls it Azarath, which means this new land, or in Hebrew, Azarath, this new land. And it took them a year and a half. Now this is around 722 BC. So we know it's way before Columbus. Okay, it's way before Columbus. And there's documents and there's information, and they know that these indigenous people and ethnic tribes here are Hebrew Israelites, because I have information that's going to show you that they know this. Okay, and so it's very important. So when Christopher Columbus and the Spanish conquistadors came here, you're talking about 1492 Columbus, and then around go up to 1499, you had the Spanish conquistadors, and they came. Once Columbus came and so-called discovered America, so-called, he didn't discover nothing. Then you had a drove of Spanish conquerors, explorers, to come to this, what they call this new land, right? So you had Spanish explorers named De Soto. Remember De Soto? Read the history about him. Cortez. Read the history about him. Read the history about Magellan. Okay, Ponce de Leon, Vasquez, and Pizarro. These are all Spanish explorers that came to this area, and what they do, they raped, robbed, and murdered, and pillaged our people and destroyed our people and took over the land that we were dwelling in for hundreds and thousands of years before they even got here. Okay, and so this is what we're gonna just cover a little bit about the indigenous ethnic people that are here in Colombia and all of South America. Okay, so now, and there's one more point about Colombia I want to bring out concerning one main thing about Colombia, and especially Bogata and the cities around in Colombia. They sit right under this long range of mountains. This long range of mountains is called the Andes Mountains. And these mountains have such a long range, they extend itself all the way from the north to the south of South America. Not only to the north and south of South America, but also they extend themselves and connect with the Rockies in America. And the Rockies go from the west of the United States. The Rockies extend itself all the way into Alaska. Then the Rockies extend themselves all the way down, going to Mexico. And from Mexico, that's where the Andes connect with the Rockies. So the Most High is incredible. So the Most High has it where these mountains connect, all right, from all over the world. But nevertheless, the Andes Mountains connect, and I'm going to show you, okay, the Andes Mountains right here. Give you a little glimpse of what they may look like. See in the background? See those mountains in the background? As you can see, this is Bogata, the city area. All right, down there they're having an election today. They're having an election for who's going to be mayor of Bogata and so forth. So you can see the streets are blocked off. All right, but up there in the background of the city, you can see this mountain, this long range of mountains. That's part of the Andes Mountains, okay? And these Andes Mountains extend itself all the way to even the Rockies. And I'm gonna show you what they say about it. The Andes Mountains elevation are the longest continental mountain range in the world. How about that? It's 6,900 meters high, okay, which is about 22,000 feet, and runs about 4,500 miles across South America. How about that? It runs through Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina. It's 500 miles wide. Okay, this is the Andes Mountains. And a lot of our people, and the indigenous people, a lot of our people live by these mountains. They live by the Amazon. They live in and around these mountains, okay, and never get no attention whatsoever. Okay, so that's just give you a little glimpse of some of the understanding about what you have here in Colombia and of course in South America, the Andes Mountains. Now, concerning the indigenous people, okay, here's what the Heavenly Father is showing us when you check out the history. All right, and here's what they know concerning the indigenous people here in Colombia and of course South America. It says Colombia's indigenous come from the three main groups. How about that? They say three main groups, but we know there's over 70 ethnic groups here in Colombia. 70 to 85. So they know this. All right. Here they recognize it only three. It says the Cambaya, the Quebecas, and the Kalina, which are Caribs. All right, these are Caribbean Indians. So the Caribbean Indians extended themselves all the way up to here in Colombia and South America, right? All right, it says the indigenous people of Colombia are the ethnic groups who have been in Colombia prior to the Europeans in the 16th century. How about that? So what are they saying? They're saying that they know that these indigenous people were here way before Columbus. Okay? It says these ethnic groups who have been in Colombia prior to the Europeans in the early 16th century. So they know that they've been here for a long period of time. Okay? So Columbus just got here, basically. Our people were here thousands of years before he got here. Okay? And then it says they're known as the Pueblo Indigenous. Pueblo means village. So I guess they're calling them the village natives or village indigenous people. All right, village people. Colombia has 70 different indigenous ethnic groups. Over 70. Okay, and I'm gonna name a few more, just so you get some understanding. I'm gonna name a few more of the indigenous groups. Okay? Now, I want you to listen to this. Here's how they know that the indigenous people were here, the natives were here way before Columbus. Now, this is information you can Google, you can look it up. It says Colombia has been inhabited by various American Indian peoples since at least 12,000 BC. Now, I looked up this information. So that means they know what? That these people were here way before Columbus. See, they only say Columbus discovered America for their own benefit. Whenever the white man does something and steals something and robs something, he puts his own stamp of approval on it and says he did it, when he didn't really do anything. All he is a thief and a robber, so he didn't really do anything. Just like when you read the history about in America, where the black man invented most of these inventions, even during the so-called Reconstruction period of America, it's a black man inventing everything. Okay? Not the so-called white man. But again, he puts his stamp of approval on it and says he did it, when he didn't really do anything. All right? So they're telling you here, Colombia has been inhabited by various American Indian people since at least 12,000 BC. So we know with the history, when you read in the Bible, how our people came to the so-called Americas and started inhabiting from the Caribbean on up to Americas, South America, Central America, and then of course North America, and also you go up towards Alaska and so forth. Those were our people, okay, prior to Columbus, okay? So they know this. It says Spaniards arrived in 1499, see? And by mid-16th century, annexed part of the region. They took it over. What do you mean annexed? They took it over. They raped, robbed, and murdered, and pillaged, and took it over. They didn't annex nothing. They took it over and stole it from our people. So it goes to show you that the ethnic tribes here are Israelites, Hebrew Israelites, and they know this when you read the Bible. Okay, and then it says Colombia acknowledges 3 ethnic groups. All right, they acknowledge 3 ethnic groups, but we know there's more than 70, about 70. All right, it says the Afro-Colombians. What do they mean by Afro-Colombians? Okay, which means they're saying so-called Negroes. Okay, what do you mean? But so-called Negroes, we thought were only in one part when they came here on slave ships to the United States. We got news for you. The so-called Negro, what they call Afro-Colombians, and the so-called Negro is all over the world. The so-called Negro is not only in Colombia, not only in Brazil, we're all over. We're in the Caribbean, we're in South America, North America, all over the world. The Middle East, Europe, all over the world. Asia, the so-called Negro is everywhere. So when you're talking about where the 12 tribes are at, you got to understand the so-called Negro, Judah, Yahweh, is everywhere. Okay, we are everywhere. Okay, we're finding this out, we are everywhere. So they're saying they acknowledge 3 ethnic groups, the Afro-Colombians, the indigenous, okay, which means they recognize some of the indigenous, but of course not all of them. There's over 70, okay? And then they say the Romani population, which I guess they mean the white folk, the Spaniards, whatever, Well, I don't know what you mean by Romanized population, but you want you to just say Spanish or the white folk, okay? And then it says they also recognize one other, which is down on the list, mestizo, which means mixed in Spanish, the mixed race of people that are here, which we know if you're mixed, you're who you are according to your forefather, according to the genealogy, who your father is. So you're who you are according to your father. So you may look Spanish, but if your forefather is Hebrew Israelite, then you're an Israelite. So we understand that. Now here go some of the indigenous tribes of Colombia. Okay, I'm gonna name about 7 of them. Three of them are already named, but I'm gonna name about 7 of them. So they got this information. You can look it up. It says the Wiwa tribe, got the Wayu tribe, Aryuko tribe, the Guambiano, the Payez, the Puinave, the Ambura Chami, and the Musicas, which I named already, the Kimbea, which are named, and the Kalina, which are the Carib Indians, which we named. These are some of the 70 ethnic groups here in Colombia, which they don't get no attention, they don't get no social media, they don't get no TV, specialized TV attention or nothing, for the most part. And so, but it's our duty as Hebrew Israelites and teachers of the Most High to really bring this to light and bring this out. And that's why the Most High has it where in these last days he has the brothers who are teaching, going abroad, and bringing this truth to our people who are in the remote corners of the whole planet Earth. Because our people are everywhere. Our people are located everywhere. We have to understand that. Okay, we're in the 4 corners of the earth, and we're in remote areas of the earth also. Okay, so wherever you don't think our people are there. All right, so it's high time for our people to understand that we have to wake up, because we're in the last days, and then teach our people their true identity and who they are, because the Most High is going to eventually bring us back to Mount Zion, to Jerusalem, Israel. Okay, so here it is. I just want to bring out this. We know that the scriptures teach us that when you read concerning the 12 tribes, that back at 1 Western and 25th Street, you had Marsha Arya Yaikwa, and Arya brought out the 12 tribes chart. He said 12 tribes, when you go down and you read about Asher, he said Asher would be from Colombia to Uruguay. Then he said, of course, Naphtali would be from Argentina to Peru and so forth, and Chile. So we know those to be more than likely these indigenous groups or ethnic groups of people that are located here in Colombia and throughout South America. Now, I seen a brother on YouTube trying to denigrate and downgrade the 12 tribe chart that Arya had brought out. And Arya, through the Spirit of Most High, had laid a foundation on the 12 tribes chart. And the understanding of, when you read Genesis 49th chapter, the personality and the character and the region that the 12 tribes of Israel will be dwelling at today. So Arya brought that out. But for a brother to denigrate and downgrade Arya and the spirit that the Most High put in Arya to bring it out, that's just total wickedness and evil. Why would a brother do that? And I seen this on YouTube, and the brother's like, Arya is wrong and so forth. But you got to understand something. What Arya did was lay down a foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel. He laid a foundation of bringing that 12 tribe chart and giving us some understanding of concerning the 12 tribes. That's not for you to denigrate and to downgrade the works of a brother, because maybe he didn't have 100% of everything that that we are supposed to have. Because you got to understand something. The Most High is bringing us this understanding of who we are and our identity in stages. Okay, the Most High is bringing it to us one level at a time. So what Ariah had, and he brought forth from the 12 tribes, and the information he brought forth, that was the foundation for us today to maybe add to it and to bring some a greater understanding to it. So that's why we go into the scriptures and we say, okay, so what Ariah had brought forth, let's add to it and let's bring a better understanding to it. Not to denigrate and not to downgrade what other brothers have brought forth. Because let's, for example, you had a lot of forerunners of Israel. A lot of forerunners. A lot. They didn't know the whole truth. They didn't know the gospel like we know it today. You can go all the way back to the 1800s, 1700s. You had Nat Turner, knew he was an Israelite. Did he know what we know today? No. All right. But he knew the white man was the devil. You had Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey. They knew they were Israelites. That's why they rebelled. Did they know everything in this Bible that we know today? No. Okay. So, I mean, and then you can bring it up to date. Okay. You had Prophet F.S. Cherry. You had William Crowdy. You had Josiah Ford. Josiah Ford wasn't necessarily into the Gospels, but he knew that we were Israelites. Okay, you had a lot of forerunners. You had Rabbi Matthews. He wasn't necessarily into the Gospel, New Testament, but he had a foundation, and he brought out the fact that we were Hebrew Israelites. And all we can do is from that foundation add to the understanding of being a Hebrew Israelite, our identity, our land, our language, and everything. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay? What about Rabbi Bibbins? He wasn't necessarily into the New Testament. He brought out certain things in the New Testament, but he wasn't necessarily into like we are today. Okay? A lot of those brothers, those forerunners, weren't necessarily into Hamashiach Yahushua like we are today. We have a better understanding today, but that's how the Most High does it. He brings it in stages. Now we're at another height, another level of the understanding of the truth. Okay? And then you had, what about, you had Bibbins, you had, what about Benny Amin? Benny Amin, he got brothers and sisters together during the civil rights movement and said, we're going to Israel. And when he started, and not only Benny Amin, but the other leaders that were with him, when they started their trek to go to Israel, people died on the way. They had to stop in Liberia, stop in Africa for a number of years. But he eventually, and people died. Did he turn back? No, he kept going. So a lot of people don't have that kind of faith even today. You got a lot of people don't have the faith that Nat Turner had, Gabriel Prosser had, or Denmark Vesey had, or even Harriet Tubman, who knew she was Israelite. So what are you talking about? So we got to stop denigrating and downgrading what the forerunners have done. And so then we bring it to David. You got Masha, Ariah, Yaquab. So you're going to denigrate everything? Yeah, okay, there were maybe some mistakes made. Okay, but nevertheless, they still laid a foundation for us to do what? To build upon. Okay, to build upon. Our forefathers always made mistakes. We didn't keep the commandments. So if you're going to denigrate somebody, denigrate our forefathers back in ancient time. See? So if you're going to do that, but you get these brothers who get on YouTube to try to say Ariah didn't know he was talking about the 12 tribe chart, just so they can bring vainglory unto themselves. And the Most High is not with that. If a man think himself to be something and believe he is something when he ain't nothing, he deceiveth his own self. You're nothing. All right? We're supposed to build upon it. Now we know. That's why at the house of David, we checked out again the 12 tribes and we built upon what Ariah brought out. And so now we know Judah came from a certain tribe in Africa, the Mendiko tribe, the Mali Empire, the Mali, from Mali. To the transatlantic slave trade, they sent Judah, Yehuda, mainly from that area, that tribe, the Mali tribe. Okay, and then we knew that we're finding out now that Benjamin came primarily from Africa, from Ghana and Liberia. See, Ariah didn't have that, so all we did was build upon it. We know that now that Levi primarily came from where? The Ashanti tribe. Okay, Ariah didn't put that down on the 12 tribe chart that he had, but we just built upon it. And so you're going to say because now Ariah said that the Colombians to Uruguay is Asher, so we know that they're Hebrew Israelites. So Ariah is not wrong, but we do know that the Hebrew Israelites, we know the indigenous people in Colombia, throughout South America, are Hebrew Israelites. So you build upon it. That's wrong. And so I just want to bring that point out because you get brothers who try to get notoriety and vainglory by denigrating what the forerunners have brought out. And it's our job to build upon that through the spirit of a Mashiach. And that's why there's one thing that we don't have. We say this all the time, the Marshal Allah summits, that we have to what? We have to come together, bear one another's burdens, in courtesy and hospitality, and in love, because by you doing that, you don't get nothing from that. When you downgrade and then cast a bad light on another brother, you don't get nothing from that. You don't get no respect from Yahweh Shai from that. You don't get nothing from that. So we got to come more together in a better fashion. And that's why Yahweh Shai brought us the Gospels to teach us, forsake not the coming together in unity. Because what the Spirit that the Most High gave Masha, Ariah, and Yaquab, and all those forerunners before, we're supposed to take that Spirit, that the righteousness of that Spirit the Most High gave them, and then build upon it. And then build upon it into the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay? And so, I just want to read this to you. And then what does the Most High say? The Most High taught us and showed us that we were going to go into captivity and be dispersed. Okay? Luke 21:24 says this, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we're going to be led away captive into all the nations. Okay? Colombia too. But not necessarily, we're not going to increase. We're going to be in poverty. We're going to be in ghettos and slums. We're going to be in reservations. See, so, and into captivity into all nations. So here in Colombia, you have those indigenous tribes